What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Preview Picks, the show where I go over the comic books coming out on Wednesday, give you an idea what they're all about, and let you know whether there's something you should talk to your comic book shop about right now or not. The first one that I want to talk about is All New Wolverine number 30, written by Tom Taylor, and this is continuing the Orphans of X storyline. Overall, this is a book that's been very consistent. It's always been solid. It might not necessarily be for everybody if you're looking for the traditional Wolverine, but there are backstories and a variety of other issues that are going to give you a little bit more key whereabouts as to Logan in his current iteration. But as for right now, there's only one Wolverine. It's Laura Kinney, and she's in a pretty badass story, so it's one that you should be checking out. Jumping on to another female in the Marvel Universe, we have Spider-Gwen number 28, which continues the Gwen arc, and really it comes down to the battle between Matt Murdock and Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Gwenum, all that kind of stuff going on. It's been a really popular book, but it's definitely been slipping down the ranks. I've been following along just because I find Gwenum kind of interesting, but that might not necessarily be for everybody. Another one coming out from Marvel is Old Man Logan number 34, which is written by Ed Brisson, and this is the Scarlet Samurai and Old Man Logan teaming up in Madripoor. So I mean, as soon as Jeff Lemire kind of got off the book, I was a little bit kind of disheartened when it came with that. You know, it's not necessarily that Ed Brisson is a bad writer, it's just that it's not quite what Jeff Lemire was doing with the character, so it's taken a little bit of a time for me to get familiar with it and it makes sense of really what's going on. It's something that I'm sure a lot of people are enjoying, but it's not necessarily one that I'm following along with very closely. Next, we're going to dive into the books of Brian Michael Bendis. So, to start off with, we have Jessica Jones number 16, who is continuing her fight with the Purple Man and whether her family will survive its encounter. Next, let's talk about Defenders number 9, which continues the Kingpins of New York story arc, and we see a prominent Jessica Jones on the cover. It's a book because, like Brian Michael Bendis, I understand that he's leaving Marvel, but a lot of his books have been kind of hit or miss with me. I was really strong on Jessica Jones. There's really good points of Defenders. I was really strong on Invincible Iron Man, but they fluctuate so much in terms of what they're giving me versus what I want from the book, or, not necessarily giving me what I need, even though I know it or don't. It's just Brian Michael Bendis has very strong moments, but he also has moments where he's not quite there. And a good example, of course, getting into Invincible Iron Man number 596, which is also coming out this week. It's just, we've got a storyline where Tony's kind of regenerated, you got Riri, you got Doom, there's a lot of different stuff going on, and it's really trying to set up for this big culmination around Invincible Iron Man number 600, which hasn't really been announced at this point in time, and it's really a gateway for Dan Slott to take over the character. So I'm curious, but I'm not excited. Of course, I do really enjoy what's going on with Garth Ennis's Punisher Platoon, so issue number 5 is coming out, and I've been really liking this throwback to the Vietnam era, both sides, telling it from the Viet Cong, telling it from the United States side, and then ultimately the development of Frank Castle from this person that he was before he became, a member of the military to who he is after. But you can always tell that he is a clear, tactical, precision-based kind of person, which is always interesting. I'm curious to see what makes him really kind of go over the edge besides the traditional things, but if there's anything key in this book that Garth Ennis is trying to tell us. Sticking with Marvel, we've got Avengers 678, which is going to continue on with the No Surrender storyline, and we've got this giant conflict that's going to be happening with the Avengers versus the Black Order, and all kinds of ridiculousness, and given what happened to Quicksilver in last issue, it's going to be pretty interesting to see who comes out of this, conflict on top, let alone the entire event that's going to be spanning 15 issues. So, 678, for people that are following along with it, I am sure that it's entertaining. It does feel a little haphazard. It does feel a little thrown together at some points in time. I know that there's 3 different writers. They're trying their best to put continuity together, but there's just so much stuff that so many moving pieces that it's really hard to kind of understand why certain things are going certain ways. It's something that I might have to read in its entirety once everything's all said and done, but I don't know if I necessarily want to do that. So I'm not sure if you guys want to do that either, but keep in mind that 678 is coming out, and this is going to continue to be a once-a-week kind of situation. One of the books I do look forward to is Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, which has got issue 15 coming out. So we're on our 3rd writer. We started off with Jerry Conway, we got a little bit of Ryan Stegman, and then now we're on to Jody Houser, and this is 8 years later. This is the first arc of 8 years later, where the Parker family is going to be on a family outing. Of course, that's interrupted by various villains and bad guys because New York City knows no limits when it comes to interrupting the Spider family. Of course, this is different because the Lizard is asking for help. So, what is that really going to entail, and how is that going to impact the lives of Mary Jane, Peter Parker, and Annie? That's always interesting, and I mean, it's just a fun book. If you want to see the family together, this is your real opportunity. So definitely something you guys should be checking out if you're a traditional Spider-Man fan. I know it might not necessarily be for everyone, but it's definitely a really cool concept, and I like to see it succeed. Jumping into a little bit more recent books, we have Tales of Suspense number 101 coming out, which is the story of Hawkeye and Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes tracking down the whereabouts of Black Widow, who they suspect is still alive, even though we clearly saw her get killed inside Secret Empire. Overall, I really like Matthew Rosenberg. I like his writing. The thing that I'm kind of up in arms about is the art. The art necessarily doesn't connect with me in any real way, so it's just one of those things where I'm going to push through it because I appreciate the creativity behind it, the story that they're trying to tell, but I do get a little distracted because the art style isn't necessarily my flavor. But it might be yours, definitely something to take a look at. Of course, if we're talking about Matthew Rosenberg, we need to talk about Phoenix Resurrection number 5. So this is the conclusion of the Return of Jean Grey story arc. This 5-part miniseries is getting its final issue to end January, and I am stoked. Based on the reactions that I got in Phoenix Resurrection number 4, I'm really excited to see where this one kind of concludes. Overall, it's been a really great X-Men story, throwing every single mutant that he possibly can into it. Obviously, Matthew Rosenberg has a love affair with these characters, and it's really showing through. Plus, the kind of twisted psychological nature of how the Phoenix is operating, trying to seduce Jean Grey into back into being its host, is always cool. Definitely a recommendation from me, and it's easily going to be a trade that you're going to want to pick up. Plus, there's a bunch of really cool variants out for issue number 5, so check those out too. To tie into Phoenix Resurrection number 5, we have Jean Grey number 11, which is going to give you a lot more backstory on the psychics that aren't there. The people that aren't there to help track down these various issues and then kind of combat the Phoenix. We're going to find out exactly what's happening to them in Jean Grey number 11. If you haven't been reading along with the issue, it's a great time to get onto it. Otherwise, if you have been, you feel like you know where this is going to go. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Probably the first time I'm going to pick up a Jean Grey book, just because I want to kind of tie it into what's happening in Resurrection. Now that we're done with Marvel, we can head over to Image, where The Realm number 5 comes out, and I'm a fan of this book. It's not necessarily anything that's going to blow anybody away. The art is solid, the story is good. I'm really attached to the character Rook, as well as this kind of masked man that we don't necessarily have a lot of identity, kind of clues with, but he likes Steely Dan and he likes to kill monsters, so I'm interested to see how the story evolves and what we can uncover as far as clues and interactions with these various other characters. So The Realm is something that I've been picking up. Also, we've got from Valiant, we've got Eternity number 4, which is continuing this 4-part miniseries, and it's kind of concluding at the end of this. And if you're interested in any kind of, like multiversal, cosmic level stuff, Divinity and Eternity are really the books you need to be reading from Valiant. They've got a really cool concept that goes along with it. The art's been very good. The characters are pretty well fleshed out, especially if you read Divinity 1, 2, and 3. It's definitely something... I'm still saying definitely. It's something that I'd recommend. As we start to wrap things up, let's talk about Detective Comics Annual number 1. So this is the first annual, even though it's been out for 2 years, which is kind of confusing, but it's the story of Clayface. It's the original origin of Clayface and his interactions with Batman, or at least the interpretation of those events by James Tynion IV. So even though it's not a member of the main series, it's one that you're going to want to kind of check out if you want to get a little bit more backstory on Basil and what brought him to be Clayface. The other annual that you'd want to take a look at is Flash Annual number 1. So this is a bit more important because Josh Williamson says that this sets up everything that's going to be going on in the Flash Wars arc that's going to be happening probably in about 2 months or so. And if you're interested to find out who's the fastest, Wally West, or the ever-present Barry Allen, this is what's going to settle it, and this is how we get started. So Flash Annual number 1 on my recommendation list. I stopped myself from saying definitely, so be proud of me. Also dropping this week, we've got a new number 1 in the form of The Silencer number 1. This is interesting. John Romita Jr. is doing the art on this one. I haven't really been a fan of John Romita's art, but looking at the previews, it seems like it's a little bit more constrained, it's a little bit more round, it's a little bit more subtle than what his, big, blocky-fingered, square-jawed characters really look like at this point in time. So I'm interested to pick it up and see exactly where it's going. I'm at least going to grab issue number 1 so that way I can get a good feel of where the art style is going as well as where the writing is going. But it's another member of the DC New Age of Heroes. So I'm really excited because there's such an opportunity to create new characters and bring them into the DC universe with no real baggage at this point in time. So it's a really strong endeavor from DC. I applaud them for that, but I need to see if they're going to, fulfill it. And then you've got the event that really originated the concept of DC's New Age of Heroes, originally titled Dark Matter, is DC's Metal. Dark Knight's Metal number 5 is dropping. We've got that fantastic cover of, the Batman Who Laughs holding the tarot cards. You've got a great variant cover by Tony Daniel, and it's just diving deeper into exactly what's going on. You've got your Hot God, you've got your Barbatos, you've got so much crap that's just being stuffed into this thing. I can't wait to see what comes out of it next. So much things, so many things. It's just staggering what Scott Snyder's doing. Of course, my big book for this week, not quite Metal number 5, but it's JLA Doom Patrol number 1, the crossover between the Justice League of America and the Doom Patrol, written by Gerard Way and Steve Orlando. And of course, you have this phenomenal cover of Milkman Man, which is basically a Superman analog inside this Doom Patrol universe, and I can't wait to see what kind of crazy and cool stuff comes out of this series. I'm really excited for it. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a success, but based on everything that I've seen so far, and the people that are working on these creative teams, based on the books that we're writing before, I'm in. I'm in for all of Milk Wars. It's just so wacky and weird and cool. I just can't help but be excited for it. But I want to know what you guys are excited for this week, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.